Today, we're going to be taking a look at 5 Pokemon I think are currently being slept on in Regulation Age. Now, keep in mind with this, right, we are only 2 days into the format, but we did have 2 decently sized tournaments over the past day. We had the Nino Tour here, which I think had like 130 players, and then we had the Beanie Brawl as well, which had about, 80 odd players. So 2 decently sized events. And there were some Pokemon that I think definitely did not see the amount of play I thought they would. And I think these are Pokemon that are just probably people are either one, kind of forgetting they exist, or 2, just haven't tested them out enough. And that's kind of the game plan today. We're just going to go through, we're going to talk about 5 Pokemon I think are pretty slept on right now. Technically 6, and you'll see why in a second. But yeah, I think these are just all really, really good Pokemon that, yeah, definitely deserve a bit more shine than they're currently getting. But to kick us off here, we have the Tauros forms, and I think both of them are actually quite good. So I do think the better one is definitely Aqua Breed, but Blaze Breed definitely still has a niche in the metagame. But Blaze Breed, what does this Pokemon do? Well, I think the first major thing to look at with Blaze Breed here is it is a fire water type, right? Sorry, a fighting water type. What else is a fighting water type in the game? Urshifu, the king that kind of just got dropped. Says the same typing. It's a pretty damn good Pokemon. I think this one is really, really good. Obviously it has access to Intimidate, which is fantastic. It also has access to moves like Raging Bull, a stab close combat as well, which in the current metagame, fighting types feel like they're pretty damn thin. There isn't too many good fighting types, so I think having something like Aqua Breed with a pretty powerful stab close combat off like base 110 is pretty damn good. And of course it has things like Aqua Jet. Normally you run Protect on it as well, but if you want a bit more power, we have things like Wave Crash. Honestly, a pretty good Pokemon. Offensively, it's fantastic. Really min-maxed as well with its awful special attack, which is one of those things you kind of forget about. Like, when you if you go through like the base stats like I do, you're gonna find it pretty far down. I think it's like a 490 mon of memory, right? Something like that. 490 down here somewhere. Yeah, there they are there. But like they're min-maxed really well with this like 30 special attack, which shout out to Game Freak for doing that. But yeah, no, this one has a lot of interesting niches too. One of which is its matchup into Hydreigon. So a lot of people, not also Hydreigon, sorry. Yes, Hydreigon, but also what's his name too? Archaludon, which are arguably the 2 best dragon types right now. So yeah, like I remember I saw something like Jody put on Twitter yesterday, but he was saying like Hydreigon's the best dragon type in the game. The second best one is what's it called? I said Archaludon, right? What do they both have in common? They're both weak to fighting types, and they are both slower than this. So one of the ways I think to play Tauros right now, honestly, is just like max, just to like make sure you always outspeed those the Hydreigons. And so a lot of them right now are going Terra Steel to help wall out the Blood Moon Ursa Luna. And because of that, just something like this with CC, you're just gonna frag it all the time. In terms of Terras for this guy, I think Water is like honestly not too bad. I also think something like Terra Steel and Terra Grass are also really good defensively. It really just comes down to what team you're playing it on. Of course, Grass gives you a way to ignore a Moongus, which is fantastic. Because again, much like Urshifu, this one doesn't really have a way to hit a Moongus. But yeah, I think it is just a really, really good Pokemon. Items that I've been running myself is Clear Amulet. I think that's just probably the best, most consistent way to run this one, especially because, this one kind of wants to make sure it's getting its attacks off. And it wants to get off the full power attacks as well, because while it does hit hard, it is nothing crazy, right? It is an Urshifu, which you have to keep in mind. But the other option as well is the Mirror Herb. For anyone who, I guess, doesn't understand what this does, basically, you bring this in on a Defiant Pokemon like Kingambit or Annihilate. You give them +1 attack, but you get the +2 attack, because technically you reduce their attack by 1, and then they get +2, so they go to +1. Mirror Herb just copies that +2 boost, so now you got a +2 Tauros, which is definitely really cool. And I do think if your team has really bad matchups into things like Kingambit and Annihilate, it's definitely something worth considering. But then we also have the Blaze Breed. Now, basically everything I just said about Aqua Breed does transfer over for the Blaze Breed. Unfortunately, you don't have access to the priority like in Aqua Jet, but that is fine. I think Raging Bull and Flare Blitz are both just really, really good moves regardless. But the other thing too that this guy has that I guess the Aqua Breed doesn't is Will-O-Wisp. Now, I will say, Blaze Breed's biggest competition is the fact that there are actually quite a few good Fire-type Intimidators, the main one being Incineroar. So that is like the one thing I guess Aqua Breed does have over Tauros, at least the Fire Breed, is it's like, hey, Tauros is kind of competing for that that fire spot with Incin, where Incin and, Aqua Breed can kind of play together. But yeah, basically everything I just said also translates for the Blaze Breed. I think it will see less play, again, simply because it competes for a slot with Incineroar, and another one that we'll see on the list shortly. But yeah, the Fire types just have a lot more, like, really good Intimidators. But the same thing stands, right? It's still really good into Incin. I mean, it is decent into Incin, especially if you run, like, Protect Clear Amulet. But obviously, it's really good into Hydreigon. Having access to Will-O-Wisp also is really nice as well, because you can outspeed a lot of threats in the metagame. But yeah, I think the Tauros is just in a really good spot right now. Personally, I expect to see them pick up a lot. especially the Aqua Breed. I think Aqua Breed is definitely one of the better water types we have right now. So another pretty slept on mon, in my opinion, is Glimmora. Now, Glimmora is just, personally, it's a mon I absolutely love playing. Glimmora. Yeah, I absolutely love playing this one. I think it's fantastic. We're in a metagame right now where a lot of the common Tailwind setters, for example, are things like, obviously, Whimsicott, Murkrow, and Talonflame are the big three. Even if you go the Illumise route, it's still basically the same premise where you have these 3 Tailwind setters. They're all weak to Rock, and Meteor Beam is just really good. So when, with something like a defensive Terra like Terra Grass, right? Basically, you can lead this next to your own Tailwind setter, whether that be Murkrow, Whimsicott, Talonflame. If they also lead theirs, you just say, you know what? Like, at the worst here, we're trading, right? Because between Terra Grass and its normal typing, you're probably not getting one-tap by anything, and you're saying, I'm taking one here. Like, worst case scenario, we trade. Best case scenario, I just live and you just die. But yeah, this one, really, really good for that. I'm a huge fan of the Power Herb Meteor Beam stuff. Fantastic, like 90% of the time, of course. Normally with this as well, you're running it out with Sludge Bomb is like your primary stab move. And then there, it's normally like Earth Power. If your team needs it as well, Energy Ball in this slot is also fantastic. And Spiky Shield also isn't too bad. Now, of course, that's just this way to play it. I do think Glimmora is definitely one with a lot of different playstyles. Of course, Toxic Debris on like these bulkier Dondozo teams is fantastic, especially if you have ways to self-proc it. We've seen people in the past run things like, D-Knight on those teams, and you just go like Terra Grass, Glimmora, and then you just like side Aqua Jet to make sure you get it off. And on sets like that as well, I think Focus Sash is really solid. Assault Vest also is like another really good option as well. And because of that on those teams as well, Mortal Spin's fantastic. Like a spread move that poisons both the enemies is it's pretty good. Let's be honest, it's pretty damn good. And in terms of moves, I mean, it's basically everything we just looked at, right? Like Earth Power, Energy Ball. It really just depends on what you're running. If you're not running like the what's it called, the Meteor Beam set, Power Gem obviously is also fantastic as well. Honestly, in my opinion, Rock just feels really, really good right now. In terms of like the EVs though, because this is the one I'm more comfortable with, I'm personally just running Max right now. And the reason for that is simply because if you go like this here, I don't think you outspeed Armarouge, right? I think Armarouge is 1 point faster off memory if they go Timid. Right? Am I crazy? Yeah, they got 139. Yeah, so that's why I've been running Timid. Because like some of the Armarouges right now are like basically running the same stuff with like Power Herb, Meteor Beam. And because of that, I never want to get like caught off guard by like a max speed one. And look, it's super early format, man. Like Max just feels pretty good early. But yeah, I think Glimmora is like a fantastic answer to like other hyper offensive teams. Not to mention, it's also really good on these slower, bulkier teams, right? Because it's a mob where if you can get like your own Toxic Debris up, it can really start positioning around and just become super annoying for your opponent to deal with. Now, speaking of another really, really good option into these hyper offensive teams, and that is Arcanine. Now, Hisuian Arcanine in particular, I do think is probably the best lead on Tailwind hyper offense. There is one team in particular I'm looking at. I'm not going to leak it just yet, but I'll probably put out a video with it in the coming days. But it's Whimsicott plus Hisuian Arcanine, right? One of Whimsicott's biggest issues is if you are not Focus Sash, which personally I don't think Sash is good, because if you Sash, they'll just fake you out. But yeah, one of Whimsicott's biggest issues is a Brave Bird Talonflame just nuking you, right? So it's either you just Terra your Whimsicott turn 1, which never feels good, or you just let it die. But Hisuian Arcanine kind of fixes that, because with Intimidate, it's really good, obviously, into the Talonflame. It means basically, if you got like max HP, I'm pretty sure Whimsicott never dies. Don't think you even need max HP. I'm pretty sure, I think it's like 220 with 4 defense, and you'll like never die to like a Jolly Brave Bird, which I think is pretty damn good. And then 2, you also just threaten a one-shot in return with Hisuian Arcanine, which is pretty damn good. And I think Choice Band is fantastic on this mon. That's Binding Band, Scott. Choice Band. Yeah, I think Bandit is like really, really good. In terms of Terras, it's really team dependent. I think Terra Water's fine. Terra Grass is also really good, I think. Terra Fairy is also pretty good. Because I do think the last move on this set, whether you're playing like Banded, AV, Life Orb, whatever it might be, I think Terra Blast is fantastic. Because again, Fairy types right now are pretty thin, so having something like a Terra Fairy, Fairy Blast coming off this is pretty good, especially into some of the fighting types out there. Terra Grass obviously is really nice into things like Dondozo and Palafin as well. So yeah, having that flexibility there, I do think is really good. But of course, this one's like bread and butter really is these two here, Flare Blitz, Rock Slide. And again, the last slot here kind of comes down to whatever your item is. I think if you're Bandit or AV, Extreme Speed's the way to go. And if you're playing like something like Life Orb, Clear Amulet, whatever, it's probably just going to be, Protect, Terra Blast or something like along those lines. E-Speed obviously is still really good always anyway, right? It's definitely something you can keep in mind. And for me, I've been going max speed because I think, again, like I want to make sure I outspeed those Armarouges, because if I'm going up against an Armarouge team, right, and they're like Side Spam, whatever, I want to make sure I like lead my Hisuian Arcanine because I can just threaten it with Rock Slide and kind of force out the Terra early, which is pretty good. But yeah, because of that, I think I've been like running something like this off memory. I think this was my set here. If you guys want to steal it, actually, I think if I'm being honest, I was just this, just for the mirror. But yeah, like that was kind of my set I was running on Banded. You know, the little bit of bulk does go a long way. But yeah, look, this bond, honestly, it's just fantastic into opposing hyper offense, right? It's obviously it's an intimidator. It's competing with Incineroar. It's also competing with you know, the Blaze Breed Tauros, kind of, which I touched on earlier. But really, its big niche over both of them, I guess, is its ability to lead into hyper offense, right? Because again, you know, the Fire Breed Tauros doesn't want to lead into Talonflame, right? Doesn't really want to lead that much into Mercury either. But Hisuian Arcanine, on the other hand, does not give a shit. This mon is happy to lead into it, and it's happy just to fire off massive nukes. But the one thing I will mention as well, I do probably have to calculate a bit, but Terra Water is good for Gholdengo. If your team is weak to Gholdengo and lead, Terra Water is not bad. Because I think like Timid Spect might be able to frag this. I'll have to double check it. But definitely something worth to keep in mind there. Yeah, regardless, it's still a really good mod. It has a lot of flexibility. I mean, E-Speed's like always really nice as well for cleaning up end games. But yeah, Hisuian Arcanine, like, this to me is the biggest surprise. Like, of all these mods, right? Like, again, I checked out those tours. Hardly any of them were running like these mods. I think Hisuian Arcanine in one of the events had like two, like, it was literally played twice and it didn't have good results by either player. But yeah, this is a one I expect to see shoot up, especially as people are starting to figure stuff out, and we're seeing that these rain teams are really picking up. Hisuian Arcanine is a pretty decent lead into some of them, right? Especially too if they aren't running what's his name? If they aren't running Archaladon, right? If they're playing like Salamence instead, I think Hisuian Arcanine is really, really good into them. So anyway, piggybacking off that slight mention there of rain, right? We also have Ninetales. Now, I guess in a sense, both kind of fill the niche I'm about to refer to, but I definitely think Alola Ninetales is the far better of the two. And that is because Snow Warning is fantastic, and Rain is absolutely dominating events right now. Like if I pull this back up here, am I talking at my ass here? Okay, there was this one here, yeah. So the Beanie Brawl, we see literally three Rain teams in the top 4, which is kind of wild. Pelipper. Yeah, so Rain's really good right now. I'm seeing a lot of it on ladder as well. And really, Sand and Sun are both like okay, I would say. But the biggest issue there is rock types and fire types tend to lose to water types. So, yeah, that's definitely something to keep in mind where, you know, it's kind of 50-50 with Snow, but also at the same time, Ninetales doesn't really have teammates it builds around. Like, it pairs pretty well with Baxcalibur. And Bax is definitely one of the better dragon types right now. And I think Clear Amulet Bax in Snow, it becomes like incredibly hard to kill. Like, you look at these stats here, dude, if you've only got physical attackers, it's very hard to get through this guy. But then too, I guess to piggyback off that as well, like I think Light Play and like Aurora Veil is just really good, right? Like Veil is just, I mean, it's massive, dude. Like halving the damage taken by allies is obviously fantastic, right? And then on top of that as well, like we're in a format where there's not many good fairies. It's a fairy type, it's pretty good. Blizzard also right now is pretty good. Like ice types honestly feel incredibly good. Like every team is running like Rillaboom plus like a dragon or two. So because of that, Blizzard obviously is also fantastic. Also has access to things like fast encore, right? Even Icy Wind for speed control. Like if your team's relatively slow, you can always just go like Icy Wind over Blizzard. Yeah, dude, I think Alola Ninetales, it's like super sick, man. And like again, we're in a format where Urshifu doesn't exist anymore, which means people can't just crit through you, right? And that's again why I think the Tauros is going to be so good, because I expect to see screens rise. Like we're in a metagame where people are playing a lot slower as it is, so because of that, just start slapping Grimmsnarl on your team, start slapping Alola Ninetales on your team. And then all of a sudden, you know, like, there's no Urshifu anymore. So, like, screens just inherently become so much freaking better. But yeah, no, I think Ninetales is a really, really good mon right now. In terms of, like, EV-ness, I don't really know what you're probably trying to go for. Like, what, you probably want to at least outspeed base 100s, I would say. Right? So, what, like, you want at least, like, 168 bare minimum? I don't know if you need any more than that. And then you can probably just, like, max out your HP and then honestly just, like, pump into here and kind of split. I haven't done calcs too much myself. I do know the homie G-Man was testing out Ninetales as well. I think he actually got 10th in one of these tours, right? Yeah, this team right here. Like, G-Man like had a really good showcase with this team as well. And, I mean, I think it's good, man. Terra Ghost, I probably should have touched on that as well. Terra Ghost just allows you to get your screens up safely. Like, if they lead Fake Out, you just Terra Ghost, get up screens. Feels pretty good, man. But yeah, and again, like, you look at his team here as well, right? It's like, he's got some guys who like playing behind screens. He's got the Ape who likes being behind screens. Baxcalibur, of course, loves it. Yeah, it's just a really good mod right now, I think. I think it has a niche and people will kind of figure it out as we go. Unfortunately, unlike Rain, it doesn't really have too many abusers. Like, I think if we look at ice types right now, like, we're pretty thin on ice special attackers. I was gonna say, yeah, it's like Glaceon, and then, I mean, like, Frostmoth, maybe, but its speed stat is, like, so garbage. Dude, maybe Frostmoth's the guy. Yeah, I might actually put Frostmoth in the builder. I love this bond. Maybe this is Frostmoth's time to shine finally. Just go like what, like Firewater Grass balance with like double snow. Maybe, dude. I mean, if this thing gets up a QD, how fast do you get, man? Do you outspeed thingy at +1? Nah, okay. Maybe that outspeeds Adamant Pulse. I'll have to double check that. But this is definitely interesting, especially because if you're playing it in snow, maybe different video. That's a different video. We're talking about Ninetales here. I shouldn't get sidetracked like this. But yeah, no, really, I think it's good, right? Anti-weather's good, screens are good, fairy type is good. Not much else you can complain about, right? I think Alola Ninetales is very good in the current format. I definitely expect to see it pick up a little bit. Now, you know, I kind of spoke about how, I guess, what's it called? How Rain was like really dominant in the mini brawl. Another really dominant archetype here is this combo right here. We see the Mouse Ape, right? Go back here. You know, we see Mouse Ape wins. Mouse Ape also comes second. Mouse Ape also comes fifth. It also, I mean, that's just a mouse by itself, but yeah, you get the point. Yeah, Mouse Ape is really, really good. And there's one mod in particular I found that actually hard walls it. Now, I will say its issue here is, yes, it hard walls it. Kind of lacks the ability to deal with the mouse itself. But that is Zoroark, right? I've been pretty high on this one. Hisui and Zoroark's matchup into Mouse Ape is insane. This thing can't be pop bombed, it can't be drain punched, and it can't be what's it called, rage fisted. But outside of that, I also think it has some really cool niches as well, right? Obviously it's a super squishy mon, right? Very fast, hits very hard. I think there are basically two ways to run this guy, yeah. One of which is like Sash. I've seen like sets like this where you got like Sash Illusion, Sash, you got like Terra Fighting, I think it is, and then you go like Hyper Voice. It's like Hyper Voice, Shadow Ball, and Terra Blast. Basically, with Hyper Voice and Terra Blast, you have like spread normal type and you have single target. Of course, your last move here is protect. And then of course you can go like Terra Fighting, and then like if that allows you to hit like the steel types, the dark types, all that kind of stuff, right? It's pretty good. Yeah, also the rock types as well. So you have that option there. But then the option I like as well is the ability to just go Choice Scarf, because this mon is actually one of the fastest Icy Wind users in the game. Out of like that, really a majority of the Icy Wind users aren't that good. So you go for things like, say, like for example, Icy Wind, right? And then you're looking at like Shadow Ball, of course, Hyper Voice as well. And then at that stage, you probably just need a way to try to hit Mouse Hold. Again, Terra Blast is probably one of the better ways to do it. I just want to double check this. Is there actually like anything else that like hits the Mouse Hold? Like, I mean, Focus Blast is probably the obvious one. But I don't really want to lock myself into Sash on that, do I? Yeah, so that's the issue. Like, there are definitely things you can do. But yeah, no, I think these three here are like the main thing for me. Again, it's honestly, it's probably just Terra Blast, Terra Fighting. Like, let's be real. It's probably like the best way to play this guy right now. But yeah, the ability to kind of just like, you know, one, you lead this mon, and they don't realize you are what you are. So you could like lead this on a Blood Moon Ursa Luna team, which by the way, that's what I've been looking at. The other one as well is Sylveon. I think Zoroark Sylveon's a really good combo. And when you have a mon like Zoroark that like, again, sits next to, or that can, you know, fake be a Hyper Voice mon, you could just like lead it, click your Hyper Voice, and just frag, right? Or just deal a lot of damage, you know, like I'm pretending to be a Sylveon. Like, oh shit, it's a Choice Scarf Sylveon. It outspent my team. It's like, nah, I'm actually just a Focus Sash Zoroark. But yeah, no, honestly, this mon's matchup into Annihilate plus Mousehold is probably the biggest reason it's here. And not to mention too, I've seen people have success with it in previous formats, and I definitely think it's in a good place. It's a mon I've got in the book. It's definitely a mon I've got like that I want to test. And as I said as well, Sylveon's kind of the mon I want to test it with. Because obviously one of its biggest issues is dark types. And obviously what deals with dark types, it's you know, it's the fairy types. But yeah, also I think Fast Sylveon, I guess I'll leak it here as well. Fast Sylveon next to Scarf Icy Wind is also another big one as well. Because like say you go like Pixie Plate, something like this, which like I don't know how good this is gonna be in particular, but like just something like this where you just like, hey, I'm leading this, I'm pairing it with some Tailwind setter. And then yeah, you just start like clicking like Hyper Voices, you got Terra Blast, of course, Quick Attack as well. But yeah, you just like, you run something like this, you like Terra Fire, because like why not? And then yeah, you just like lead it next to Zoroark, you disguise it as something else, you just go like Icy Wind, like Hyper Voice, start running through teams. I think there's a lot of potential there. It's in the builder. I'll hopefully drop a team within the coming days. But yeah, it's in the builder. But anyway, guys, that's the 5 months here I wanted to talk about. I guess let me know down below what you guys think of these. Obviously we're still super early in the format. I think at the time of recording this, we're like what, probably 2 days into the pre-format as well. Like obviously a bunch of people are still preparing for Worlds. But nonetheless, we have some exciting stuff going on. The format looks incredibly good. There's a lot of stuff going on. Obviously, we are starting to see things like Rain and and Mouse Ape kind of like dominate the format. But this is the fun thing. Now we get to start countering these teams and seeing what we kind of come up with. And again, that's how we ended up on a Zoroark. But yeah, anyway guys, I'm going to end it here. Let me know what you think of the video down below. And yeah, catch you guys in the next one. Peace.